In Katerina on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and we haven't gotten anything substantial in terms of a reckoning at Secret Service or with the intel and law enforcement agencies that were engaged in perpetuating the Russiagate hoax, or even with the handling of the Epstein files, but we're inching closer. We've got a grand jury out on Obama administration era officials as it pertains to Russiagate. By the way, as just an additional aside, which is an easy tangent, talking about Russiagate, naturally you think Adam Schiff, since he was one of the main perpetrators of the hoax. Now under criminal investigation for mortgage and bank fraud. Talked about that before, about his competing theories of where he is actually a resident and the implications when it came to housing-related transactions. He's under criminal investigation. So reported. And we have this story from Susan Crabtree over at RealClearPolitics.com about the Secret Service at the behest of Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson stopping the renewal of Kimberly Cheadle's security clearance. Well, you think someone who resigned in disgrace, you wouldn't need a senator to prompt it. You would just take the necessary action. This should be by acclamation. Should her security clearance be revoked permanently? Yes. Moving on. But it's never that easy. Susan Crabtree is the RealClearPolitics.com national political correspondent, co-author of Fool's Gold, The Radicals, Con Artists, and Traitors Who Killed the California Dream and Now Threaten Us All. Susan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me again, Dan.
So Kimberly Cheadle and has her security clearance been revoked, or is it just not been re-upped? It's a little, seems like a little hazy to me whether there's been any definitive action taken from the report you issued, because you're getting sort of hazy responses from Secret Service.
That's right. I got no clear responses. Their statement to me was very vague, to say the least. It said that some directors weren't going to get their security clearances renewed. So I went back to Senator Johnson's office, who's the only one that I could get really on the record taking issue with this on Capitol Hill, if you can believe that. And he said, they contacted us the same day you contacted the Secret Service, and they told us that she was not going to get it renewed. So every 5 years, your security clearance needs to be renewed. She has been out of the Secret Service, resigned in disgrace last year after the Butler and her terrible, ridiculous testimony on Capitol Hill that had lawmakers fuming. So she resigned, and after they threatened to look at her phone, what was on her phone and whether she was communicating with the White House, but yet she was asking to get her clearance renewed. Actually, it's a courtesy that the Secret Service has been doing for former directors for years, as a lot of our intelligence agencies have been doing for directors who reach that brass plum position. They get it for life, from what I understand.
Right, until somebody intercedes. And this is part of, it's below the fold, but it really is part of the explanation of the so-called deep state. When you have these same people that have access to classified information and so thus have influence that they can peddle, and many do peddle it for profit, but also they can meddle. It's peddling and meddling. They know things they shouldn't know, and they can, engage in, fifth column actions against the current administration, like we saw play out against President Trump in his first term. So, I mean, it seems like it's sort of an esoteric administrative issue, but it has real implications.
That's right. And we saw Donald Trump take action against John Brennan. James Comey, I guess, already said he gave up his security clearance. But those 51 intelligence officials, James Clapper included, and even John Bolton, his former NSA chief, they all got their security clearances revoked on January 21st, the day after Donald Trump was inaugurated, because he was sick and tired of that, what you just said, the peddling and meddling. They get to land very lucrative cable TV talk show gigs or Fortune 500 gigs with their national security clearance. And then they get to the top level people like Clapper, Brennan, and Comey were continuing to surveil and continuing to meddle in intelligence and skew it and politicize it into the Biden administration against Donald Trump. These are the accusations, according to DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard. So, yes, it's a problem, and Trump has nipped it in the bud as far as the top intelligence agencies, and even Perkins Coie denied that law firm because they played the role in paying for the dossier that actually Hillary Clinton paid for, but they were the pass-through. And so, but we didn't know, I didn't know, a lot of people, I think even many Secret Service agents that are retired and those that still are on the job did not know that you give the former directors distinct security clearance renewals for life. And so they stopped it only after I contacted them with Senator Johnson's opposition.
Right. Do the sensible thing only as a last resort. The Kim Cheadle, we've been talking a lot about Comey and Brennan and maybe Clapper and maybe others having legal exposure. And there's that grand jury that's out right now that I just mentioned for perjury, for conspiracy against rights, maybe, other legal theories bouncing around. But for going back to perjury, does the former Secret Service Director, Kim Cheadle, does she have legal exposure potentially here? Criminal legal exposure?
Yes, because according to a blistering new report by Senator Rand Paul, who chairs the Homeland Security Committee, he, on the anniversary of Butler assassination attempt, he issued a report that weekend that said she had perjured herself. And you already had Representative Paulina Luna saying this last year, that if she hadn't resigned, she was going to pursue contempt of Congress charges against her from her perjury to the House Oversight Committee. And I spoke to an aide on the House Oversight Committee, and they said they are still waiting to see. They could still take action against her because of that perjury. She has denied it to the New York Times. But to me, the perjury was about denying assets to Donald Trump, and she's parsing her words, saying that she didn't deny assets. She actually added assets to the Butler rally. But there's, from what I understand, Director Curran, Secret Service Director Sean Curran, has the receipts, and he kept all the emails of his request for security assets denials for Donald Trump when he was the head of his detail during the presidential campaign.
Yeah, I wonder, I know we've talked about him before, and I know Curran, the current Secret Service director, has the confidence of Trump and was intimately involved in Butler in terms of his request being denied. So he knows, who some of the problems were and where some of the problems are in the agency. But I'm just trying to get, since you're so knowledgeable about Secret Service, like what your handle is and how this is going. You watch Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and who they were when they were on podcasts and radio shows previous, and how they've had to maybe color inside some lines they didn't want to color in so far in their roles at FBI. And I wonder, as they're pursuing reforming those agencies ostensibly, trying to get like a stop, look, and listen handle on how it's going. And I would ask the same thing about Secret Service.
Yes, I just posted on this yesterday. I'm not so sure that he has the full confidence of Donald Trump from what I'm hearing rumblings of that in the last week, since both a mini scandal occurred that Donald Trump wasn't briefed properly about, from what I understand, about this agent wanted to take his Air Force wife on the trip to Scotland to smuggle her on, even though she wasn't supposed to be there on this C-17 plane heading to Scotland. And that really angered Donald Trump because he was asked about it by a friend of mine named Jeff Earl, who works for the Daily Mail, on Air Force One. And he really didn't have the facts at hand. And so he's very angry about that, from what I understand.
Being blindsided.
Blindsided, not briefed properly, and also this Kimberly Cheadle issue. It calls into question what's going on with Sean Curran. And then yesterday, I posted about there's internal anger among the agents. There's a huge retention problem, but they're not getting any briefing about the reforms from Sean Curran. They said it's this radio silence is killing me. That's what the meme was saying. And since I have learned that they do not, this is breaking news on your show, they have not received the retention bonuses that they've been promised, and they were supposed to receive them on Sunday. And they've been waiting for them, and many of the hardworking agents have not received them, so there's a lot of anger in the agency about that, and agents are headed to the doors. They're having an extreme brain and talent drain of the senior agents out the door to either retire, to the Drug Enforcement Agency, or to Homeland Security.
Well, that's interesting. That really is a tell. You know, about leadership too. I mean, you see recruitment hitting their recruitment in the armed services hitting their marks according to DOD. You see 80,000 people have applied to be ICE agents. I mean, which speaks to sort of what Tom Homan and that team is doing, and then and I don't exactly know where FBI recruitment is, and then you hear something like this at Secret Service, and that speaks to, like it being on the Chicago PD or the New York City PD. Yeah, this is not somewhere I want to be any longer than I have to be. It doesn't speak well of what's going on internally. Exactly.
That's exactly right, Dan. And this idea that they could promise them up to $50,000. I heard actually, for most people, it was 15% of their pay, so it wasn't as much as $50,000, but it was significant. And I asked Sean Curran on before the anniversary, about the days leading up to it, how the retention was going. Share this with me, and share with me how you're dealing with all of these DEI officials. There were dozens of them at the Secret Service and across the federal government. But after Trump put out the executive order ending DEI at the federal level, what happened to these individuals? And they did not respond to my questions. They put out a press release, and the press release was very vague about the reforms they were making. And also, there's a big push to get them just to focus on protection. You're obviously spread too thin if you can't retain enough agents, and you're complaining about that constantly. That contributed to Butler, but you're focusing on counterfeiting still and things like EBT fraud. And child trafficking that is an overlap with FBI. So why don't you just focus on protection? And there's no talk of that in the Secret Service. It's very controversial because they don't like to give up their investigative responsibilities, from what I understand. But that was a big recommendation from the Independent Bipartisan Review Board. And I asked about that. No response. Sean Curran has not given a press conference where you go back and forth with reporters. He has not been called up to Congress where you go back and forth with lawmakers. He has not had a hard-hitting interview. He's done one with Laura Trump, which was very light, and another one with Sean Hannity. So it's very short, these interviews. And so people are saying, what is going on in the Secret Service? Has there been a course correction? And if not, there should be, with scandals continuing to happen on Sean Curran's watch.
Susan Crabtree, RealClearPolitics.com's national political correspondent and co-author of Fool's Gold, The Radicals, Con Artists, and Traitors Who Killed the California Dream and Now Threaten Us All. Fool's Gold is the book. Susan Crabtree, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you, Dan. Thanks so much for having me again.
And Susan joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. My father was a union iron worker, just like his father. But while he inherited his father's skill, he did not inherit his tolerance for taking orders from union bosses. He needed a change, something